The Iron Harbor's silence. Once there was a city made of granite and sea spray called Port Arthur. It was a place where great ships rested like sleeping whales, and stone walls stood as tall as mountains. Alexei, a young sailor, stood on the highest balcony of the naval fortress, looking out at the vast blue horizon. He believed the walls would stand forever, protecting the harbor from the changing winds of the world. But far beyond the hills, a new force was arriving. Katsuo, a scout from the east, climbed the rugged ridges overlooking the city. He carried a heavy telescope and a heart full of determination. To him, the fortress was not just a wall, but a puzzle that his army had come to solve. He watched the tiny flickers of light in the city below, knowing that the quiet would not last. The winter air grew sharp, and the sky turned the color of lead. Inside the fortress, General Mikhail paced the floor of his map room. He pointed to the thick lines representing the walls, assuring Alexei that the iron and stone were unbreakable. They spoke of duty and the pride of the fleet, even as the first distant thud of drums echoed through the valleys. On the other side of the ridge, General Takeo stood with Katsuo. They looked at the formidable gates of the harbor. Takeo did not speak of walls. He spoke of the spirit of his men. He placed a steady hand on Katsuo's shoulder, gesturing toward the horizon where the sun was beginning to set, signaling that the great struggle was about to begin. Then came the time of the Iron Rain. For many months, the hills shook and the sea churned. Katsuo found himself in the mud of the trenches, helping a friend carry heavy crates of supplies. The world was filled with the roar of engines and the whistle of wind, and the proud green hills turned to gray dust under the weight of the siege. Inside the walls, the giants of the fleet began to sink into the mud of the harbor. Alexei sat in a darkened stone hallway, away from the noise. He held a small, dry piece of bread in one hand and a crumpled letter from home in the other. The grand feasts of the fortress were gone, replaced by the quiet endurance of men waiting for a sign of what was to come. The most important hill, known as 203-meter Hill, became the center of the world. General Takeo climbed to its summit after many long days of toil. He stood amidst the broken rocks and looked down at the harbor. From this height, the unbreakable fortress looked fragile, and he knew the end of the long winter was near. General Mikhail saw that the walls could no longer hold back the tide of history. He called Alexei to his side one last time. In the dim light of a flickering lantern, Mikhail signed a white paper. He handed it to Alexei, his face solemn. "Take this to the hills," he whispered. "The time for the Iron Rain is over." In a small village called Shuixiing, under the bare branches of a plum tree, the two generals met. Mikhail and Takeo sat across from one another at a simple wooden table. There were no shouts or drums, only the sound of a pen scratching against paper. They looked at each other with respect, two leaders who had seen the cost of the great stone walls. The gates of Port Arthur opened, and the silence returned to the harbor. As the sun rose over the quiet water, Alexei and Katsuo passed each other on the dusty road leading out of the city. They did not speak, but they shared a long, knowing look, a nod between two souls who had survived the storm. The fortress remained, but the world had moved on.